Hello everyone, and welcome to Runecraft. We're going to cover combat extensively in this video to get you guys a basic understanding of it. We will not be covering conditions too much in this video. That will be a separate video, but for this video in particular, we're going to be covering combat. How does combat work? How can you navigate it properly? So when it comes to the time when it's your turn in the group to play, that you're ready and you're not taking too long, and that's okay, especially when we're still learning, to take some time. But this will help smooth things along and get to it. And further ado, we're gonna get to it. So once again, welcome back. Hopefully you checked out our first video on character creation. We're gonna go ahead and just pick up where we left off. So at this point, I'm just going to show you kind of what a round of combat looks like, and then I'm going to explain it in further detail and break it apart so you guys can see how it worked, what part of it do you need to pay attention the most for, I suppose. So the first thing, in most games they call it initiative. This is where the start of the turn order or rounds are. Runecraft uses live action rounds. It sounds like we're not firing blanks over here. Live action rounds. And so what that means is, as soon as a combat breaks out, there's a point of escalation. Picture like someone dropping a pebble into a pond. A pond. I swear I can speak English. Into a pond, and the ripples kind of fan out. So let me go ahead, let me pull up the sheet for engagement and how that would break down. So in the book, this is going to be page 48. On the digital, this will be 49 because it includes the cover. So this example is the idea of like a bar fight breaking out between a barbarian and a dwarf who are arm wrestling. All right. So in this, it pretty much happens as the dwarf starts a fight with the barbarian and dwarf start a fight over the arm wrestling competition. The barbarian punches the dwarf, which is the point of escalation. It's on. The fight's on. Everyone stands up like, here we go. The barbarian punching the dwarf is the point of escalation. The square up phase is the next part, is where you can try to look around and see where everyone's positioned, ready for this fight, right? Just because you have a fast agility shouldn't mean the person that's literally right beside the barbarian isn't going to act before you. It's a little bizarre to me that in some other systems that it's all based around one stat, and that stat is pretty much the god stat for everything. So in here, your positioning matters. And you may not even know where you are in the room if you haven't said anything. It's up to your game master to kind of ask, as once escalation breaks out, you said, hey, where were you when this happened? And so this breaks it down kind of like a realm of distance. And so we even have a simple guide here. This Rage Band guide was inspired by Bob the World Builder. But I mean, I think a lot of people use simplistic terms for it. But he made a video about it. I recommend you check out that video. He's got a lot of fantastic videos, Bob World Builder. So under the range band guide, you'll see that 5 feet 1 meter is close, is adjacent, is usually what people say, or within melee range. Not melee, melee. I guess, I don't know. But if your table says melee, at least make sure everyone's, or saying it the other way, everyone at the table say it the same way, or else you might have people rolling their eyes. Short is like beyond that 5 foot range, beyond that 1 meter range, beyond your arm's reach. Right? And that's 10 feet to 2 meters. Then we have mid-range, which is like 30 feet to 6 meters. And then we go to far, which is like 60 feet out and 10 meters. Now, how does that equate to on a game board? Well, 60 feet is 10 spaces, 10 hexes, or 10 grids away. Okay? So you can see this is here. Now, the cool part is with systems like Roll20, they actually have a tool that will allow you to measure, the ruler tool here, and you can measure that out. So 60 feet is like that. 10 feet is like here, right? Like 5 foot is like within reach, like within striking distance. 10 feet's a little beyond. And then over here, that's 20. And then to like this guy, this noble back here is 60. Okay, so just to give an idea of perspective in your head, if you're playing Theater of the Mind, if you're playing on a battle map, where things are in relation to each other. It also is helpful to know this, so you can also describe things in terms of height, so players have an idea of the scale on the area they're in, like where the roof is, where the boulder is next to them, where's the little hill next to ours, can I cut cover from that? Is this crashed wagon here? Can I get behind this? Is this high enough? Can I climb on top of it? There's going to be situations where you're going to have some strange answers, and to be able to have some sort of reference gives everyone at the table something to pull from, and not just the players, but specifically you as a game master. If you're the game master, if you're listening to this, but that also makes it really easy. Like, oh, hey, I want to climb this tree, and I don't have the ability to do it without a penalty, from Uma, the dragon of the jungle, the jungle dragon, known for climbing trees and ambushing prey. So that's 20 feet up there. So you can see that's a good distance, but if you don't have that ability, you might have to tack on double this to climb, or add another 20 feet onto it to double it to climb the tree, to get like a height advantage, or to get a different perspective on the battlefield. So little things like that. That's what this guide comes into, is trying to give you a frame of reference. So the first person who's going to go is the barbarian who punched the dwarf. He escalated the fight. The punch, that action, that will be the attacking action. The barbarian will punch, and then the dwarf will punch back, and then the friends that are next to the dwarf and the barbarian are going to go ollie the gnome, and the ranger who is nearby placing bets in the arm fight will be after that, who's a little bit further away, and then the sorceress who's at the bar trying to get information, and then a dwarf who just stepped back in from the Russian move like 60 feet away, who just came back into the establishment. It kind of gives an idea of where people are, and it also creates a lived-in space, which is really cool. I think it creates a lot of narrative viewpoints, and also a lot of tools the players can use. Was there a bottle of beverages behind the counter that the sorceress could grab and then throw it, and throw a firebolt at it, or fire at it, and ignite the area to cause the fight to break up? Poor bartender's gonna cry himself to sleep, and his 27 kids. But then again, maybe he shouldn't have 27 kids in this type of economy. Just kidding. Yeah, but it helps to set the scene. So let's go back through this initiative, where like this ripple effect is happening, right? So like I said, then that gives the game master a chance, before we go too far into combat, to describe everything a little more in detail, just so that players know what they have to work with, what environmental things they can interact with during the fight to change things, maybe knock a table over, use it as cover, simple things like that. And then the lineup phase is just writing that down, right? Then we would write down Dave the Barbarian, right? The Barbarian will go first. Then the dwarf who got punched. And then his buddy Ollie the gnome was with the dwarf. Ollie the gnome. Then it's the ranger who is nearby. Then was the sorceress at the bar, and then another dwarf walked in. I'm gonna call him Toilet Dwarf. Came back in from using the bathroom, right? And so that creates your lineup of who's going first in the turn order, right? Of who's going to do what and what's going to happen. Now, of course, this is different when you run monsters. Monsters will more or less take the place of the dwarf that got punched, right? If you ambush it. Otherwise, it's the other way around. The monster's going to ambush you, and it's going to go first. So you got to be very careful, monsters. We're going to cover a monster fight in a moment. A little further in the video, we're just going to get to the basics of combat. Well, actually, I'll probably make another video about how to handling monsters. And what to expect with them, because they do function and handle differently than players, and that's actually a very good thing, and it's a lot more fun. Either way, so here we go. Dwarf here, Dave the Barbarian. And so this is how you determine your turn order. Now, what happens when I make my attack? We're going to pretend we're Dave the Barbarian here. We're going to make an attack. And so the first thing you do is you will roll a standard attack to hit. and an accuracy bounded to a d20 plus their appropriate modifier for the initial attack. Then roll a d10 for generated energy that can be used for further actions. I'm going to break that down. Right before I do that, I'm going to quickly bounce back to the initiative for just a moment. What happens if two people are equidistant from the fight, right? From the escalating point, right? Like, let's say the ranger and Ollie are right beside, the same distance to where the escalation point of the fight broke out. Then they would have to roll to see who goes first. So this would be a challenge check. And for the challenge check, you're going to want to determine, based off the environment, what would be the most appropriate stat to add to this challenge check. Okay, it's going to be a d20 roll, and you may decide there's so many people around this arm wrestling fight that agility isn't possible. Speed, finesse to get by is not possible. There's too much. It's standing room only. So you may say, you know what? It's going to be add strength to push people out of the way to get to the fight, right? So that would make more sense. Or let's say you're in an area where magic is influencing the environment. There's like floating little rocks. There's magic flow, shifting, almost like a tide of water of magic that's kind of going in and out of an area. You could say, okay, you're going to roll a d20 and add your magic stat. I think I call it arcane. I'm sorry, I do interchange magic and arcane a lot. To me, they're synonymous. You're going to add your magic or arcane stat. Sometimes I also do the same thing with ground and earth. You'll hear me do that too throughout these videos. I mix the two. So that's how you would resolve a tiebreaker in distance, is you would roll to then see who would go first in those specific instances where it is exactly, we're all lined up, specifically exactly equidistance from each other, or these two people are in equidistance. Bouncing back to attacking, you're going to roll a d20 to see if we hit. So I have this bandit here. I'm Iroh, this knight. We're the Blood Knight from the first episode you saw. Oh, sorry, not that. My beautiful, ugly painting so we grab. Oh, I put a spear. That's the same. It does the same thing as a sword, a spear and shield. The only difference is I get to hit from an adjacent spot a little further. Either way, we have Iroh here. And so Iroh's going to walk up and he's going to do a basic attack, right? So you're going to roll a d20. Wow, we rolled well. Got an 18. Iroh does not have anything to strength to attack with the spear. So how do you determine what weapon does what? It's if you're trying to do a physical melee attack, it will be strength. If you are trying to do a physical ranged attack, such as a bow, it will be agility. It's for accuracy, because the bow pool is where the strength really lies, right? But the agility is just, this is to hit, not for damage purposes. If you're going to use a staff, then your a modifier to add would be magic or arcane, as I said before. Let's say you're going to throw a boulder. Your distance might say that you're a pretty large rock. You're going to pick up one of these rocks aside. Iroh's going to throw it. I may say, instead of using for a physical ranged attack agility, I'm just going to have you throw strength. Add strength because it takes a lot more strength to eat a boulder. It may not be as accurate, but I'm also going to say that the distance for you to throw that, because it's heavy, is half of your normal range distance. If you remember from the first episode, range is based off of your speed stat, which is 6 plus whatever your agility modifier is. For Iroh, it is a 1, so that would mean it'd be a 7. And so that would be a 3.5, right? Okay, so if a space is of a 3.5 to throw that boulder, well, I would round it up. Always round up in favor of the players when it comes to situations like this. There you go. So yeah, you would round up, making it so that Iroh had a boulder toss if he was to pick up one of these larger rocks of 4, which is still pretty good. It just means that he can't throw the full 7 squares. But there's an explanation of some of it. There's also spirit and faith. Faith is where you pull your powers from your belief in your deity, and that is where you kind of get your magic and arcane, your influences from. And you may have a special way of communicating that. And I would love to hear more about that if you do have something at the table that you thought was really cool. Because I've noticed that a lot of players, that is the last stat that I've seen in most every case, except for I think one player picked a descendant of Aura. Her name was Cece, and Aura has ORA, the Sky Dragon, has bonuses to faith, and so they would use their magic tarot cards with their faith. And you can do that. Faith isn't the same in our world as it is in Runecraft. You can make it whatever you want to be. And spirit is your connection to nature and to the animals and to creatures and nature essence. There's more to it than that, but that is the simplistic term. It is your connection to nature. It's your ability to communicate with animals as well. So if you want to try to communicate with animals, you're going to want a higher spirit stat. I digress. Your staff does not have to just be magic. If you're basing your magic off of spirit or faith, you can use either of those stats instead as your accuracy instead of staff. You could also be a wand. Like if you're going to cast magic, you use magic from your weapon as like a base attack, that's where those would come from. Okay, so I'm going to roll real quick. So I'm going to roll my d20. I got an 18. Iroh doesn't have anything, but that will hit. This bandit has a hide armor, which is a 14, so that hits. I have a spear. I do a d6 of damage because I'm using it one-handed with a shield. So I deal a d4. I deal 4 damage. Now, what type of damage is that? If I don't have any runes in my weapon, it will default to my descendancy, so that would be for magic or arcane. So that's where that would come from. Otherwise, you can influence this. There are abilities that can change your attributes, as we do have a table on Runecraft. I'll show you the table real quick of elemental type matchups. And as I remember saying in the previous video, is that magic is good into poison, but metal is good into magic. Well, this is a bandit. A bandit might have something more common. A common rune is light, dark, ground, metal, and water. Yeah, water is a common? Yeah, water's common. Sometimes I get mixed up too. I know fire and ice are uncommon. Electric's uncommon. Arcane is really rare. Poison and sharp and crushing are rare. Nature is really rare, and air is uncommon, and I'm missing one. Diamond is not on here because it deals double damage to everything, so you don't need a chart for it. It just deals double damage to everything, which is the rarest rune. Okay, so this is the rune conversion page. So let's go over, we rolled a d20. We made our hit, right? I'll cover how you would change your attack in a moment. Let me show you the next step. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to roll a d10. This d10 symbolizes the energy you generated that round. Okay, so we generated 3 energy. 3 energy. Okay, now we use this 3 energy to power abilities that are from our class, as well as either from our armor or from our weapon. We'll go into the armor and weapons shortly. Let's hop over to the class. So we're a Blood Knight. As a Blood Knight, here we go. We have, at level 1, we have Blood Price, King's Grass, and Shielded Strike. But remember, we changed King's Grass. You can interchange ones of the same cost or exchange them for higher cost, but you can never go lower. So we exchanged the second one, King's Grasp, for Stars Align. So we had rolled a 3. We can do an additional attack with Shielded Strike, which also gives us a shielded condition, but we already have a shield. So we have 1 instance of shielded. Okay. So we're going to roll Blood Price here, which means we're going to take some damage, but we're going to upgrade our weapon dice from a D6 to higher. Right? And then we're going to activate on the second one, we're going to activate Stars Align. Actually, no, it costs 2 and it's only for 1. So how about we do, I think we actually just go for a Shielded Strike. So this gives you options of what you want to change. So we're going to do Shielded Strike here. So we're going to deal an attack, make an additional attack that deals 1 weapon dice of damage and gain 1 stack of the shielded combat condition for 1 round. So we're going to roll another d6. Now, abilities always hit. That's another thing. You're not going to re-roll your accuracy again for abilities. So I strike this bandit again for 3. So in total, I've done 7 damage to this bandit. Okay. 7 damage, and I've gained a shielded condition. Now, I can put that here. So now I have 2 versions of shielded because I already am wielding a shield. So this will make me quite tanky, very tanky, to be able to absorb, especially one-on-one in a situation like this where I'm drawing the attention of the target. So that is how you get energy. Well, what happens if I didn't want to use that energy and I wanted to save it? Well, you can. Instead of using it immediately to use Shielded Strike, we could have saved it and only have 1 shielded condition, not done that extra damage. And we only dealt 4, and we would have had 3, and it would have rolled over to the next turn. Now, your stored energy, you're going to write this here, right? So we have 3, right? I'm going to save it. We have 3. You can use this energy at any point during combat to assist yourself or to assist other players or to just help kind of control the combat in some ways. Now, if you do use your energy, so let's say I use King's Grasp to slow down an opponent by sealing their movement for 2, the enemy will still get a chance to respond. It does not stop their attack entirely. What it does is it forces them to change how they would attack. So if you seal my movement, the enemy, instead of going at them with the claws, is then going to throw quills at them or have some sort of ranged attack. So that guarantees that every monster is going to have a physical, usually hand-to-hand combat skill or range attack, or at least a range attack only. Because that way that makes it so this isn't just interrupting their attack entirely and not able to do anything. Now, so that's one thing, as well as you can use your energy at any time point during the combat. Enemy does this, you do that, you do this, the enemy does that, and you can go back and forth, or you can save it. Now, you can only have a maximum of 10 energy though. So once you save up 10 total, you cannot go over. If you have 3 energy and I roll a 10 the next turn, I can only go to 10. So anything over that, like total would have been 13, is wasted. It goes away. You do not gain it. Okay? That would mean that no matter what, your maximum is 10 that you can use in one single round. There are abilities that can allow that to temporarily exceed that amount, but they need to be activated when the time is appropriate for that to happen. So, with that being said, that is how you do a basic attack. That is how you generate energy. That is how you fuel abilities. How do I manipulate the element to the damage that I'm using to attack and the armor when I receive an attack? Okay, so let's say this bandit swings with their two-handed spear. I did click a d20, didn't I? I did. I got a 4. He misses, but let's say he hits. Oh my. What are these rolls? 4227? That's terrible luck. Either way, let's say the bandit hits before I'm here all day rolling a dice. Let's say the bandit strikes Iroh, right? And they have a metal spear. I can actually show you what that looks like. Let's say they have a metal spear. And because Iroh is magic attuned, because they don't have any rune in their armor, they're going to take double damage. So this is a double-bladed pole armor. There's a metal spear here. So that would mean it's going to do 2d6 because using both hands on the spear. And it's going to deal double damage. So this is going to be 4d6, which is 14 damage. That's massive damage. So that'd be 14, right? Well, let's say Iroh thought ahead of this. There may be... metal is a pretty common rune. I need to be careful. Let me change my armor to something else. So Iroh finally does a goblin quest, goes out, makes some runes, which is currency in Runecraft, to craft some new armor, or to imbue their armor, their hide armor, with a rune. We'll go into imbuing in a moment. Let me finish the armors, and then I'll tell you about when you put, or enchanting armors with runes. So, let's say they grab, we have, for the basic commons, we have a light rune of armor, which is helpful for healing, to remove a condition from a target. Now, just because they look like robes, cloth armor, hide armor, or metal armor does not mean you can't have your version of your armor with those runes. These are just examples of what the armor would look like. Once again, gorgeous art by Ricardo for the armors. So let's say one of the most popular ones so far has been the ground armor, which is the gambeson, which is ironic because it's usually the basis for most armor in medieval times and plate armor history. There's usually a gambeson or something underneath. So we have these choices between the commons, a light, a dark armor, a ground armor, a water rune, and a metal rune. So he's like, oh man, I don't want to be weak to metal. Let me change to metal. Would that give me resistance? It does not give you resistance, but it means you still do not take double the damage. Now, each one of these armors have a active ability. Some of them have a passive ability instead. So let me go over. This is the water rune armor. When you turn your armor to water rune armor, you then get the weaknesses of water. And this overrides your base element of arcane for your defense, for defensive purposes when you are struck. Now, this passive ability means that when you are clearing dungeons with your buds or finding treasure, you will find one more common rune from clearing dungeons. When you're lockpick or detecting traps, you will get to use your weapon dice to roll to add to its total. When disarming a trap, you will add half of your weapon dice roll to disarming. So this helps you get to be that treasure hunter by having this armor just as a passive thing, so you kind of build into it. So if you let's say you pick the water armor, right, for that sweet passive ability, we go back here, the rune elemental chart on page 29, and you're going to see that means you're weak to ice, but you're strong against fire. So that really helps out. Now, what happens if I don't want that? I want an active armor. Let's go back to that gambeson, and we'll go over active armor for active abilities for the armor. So the ground rune allows you to manipulate the earth. Kind of like if you're playing Minecraft or other games where you terraform and like open a trench. But imagine if you could do that with just like a movement of your hands. Similar to like earthbending, I guess, in Avatar. But yeah, you would be able to create a hole through the earth, or you'd be able to make a trench, or you'd be able to build like a little hill, something to help give you cover, or divert something away, like water, lava, something away. It's very circumstantial, but very helpful when that circumstance happens, and usually most of the time you're surrounded by earth, unless you're out at sea, right? So this is an active ability that the armor can have. Now there's other ones here, like the metal one's really cool. You can give yourself the shielded condition for 2 energy. And so you're going to notice too, these have energy costs. using these active abilities of these armors. So this is an active ability. You grant yourself 1 instance of the shielded condition, but now you take damage for an adjacent ally, a nearby ally, until the end of the next round. So now you're kind of like that tank protecting your front line flanker or rogue DPS, whoever else damage person that's near you, but they're squishy. So that you're able to kind of be that super tank that you've always wanted to be, to take those hits and block it for your teammates. So, with that being said, this is active and passive armor. We're going to go into weapons now, and then we'll go into, what happens if I use abilities and stuff outside of combat or in combat? How do I, does energy roll over? Questions like that right after. So let's say we're in combat. Iroh sees that the guy's wearing a Gambison, which is ground rune. So he would need a nature rune to do double damage to him, which is very rare and expensive. Oh, so that's poison. The nature rune here. To deal double damage. And he would get an active ability with that. But let's go ahead. Let's pick something simpler. Just for the purposes of most of you at the beginning are going to be handling with the common runes. So let's say he sees him have a ground Gambison. He's got a metal rune weapon. And we said he had a double... No, this is what we said the bandit had, so let's not confuse him. Let's switch to something else. Okay. Crystal Staff, which is like a spear staff, which is perfect because Iroh also likes to cast magic. So Iroh also now gets the ability for, instead of doing Shielded Strike, to now launch a boulder out from their staff. Like pull up rock and send it flying. Now this happens with any of the ground-based weapons, and now changes the damage from arcane magic to ground damage, to ground magic. Oh, sorry, ground magic, ground damage. And you'll launch a weapon, a boulder out for what your spear dice is worth. And so your spear, in this case, is a d6. Even if you use it with 2 hands, which is a 2d6, the base damage for a spear is a d6. And the same goes for the hammer, it's d8s. So it'd be 2d8s if you're going to swing it. But as of whenever you see weapon dice, that means what is the singular base weapon dice for that weapon. A hammer is a d8, a spear is a d6, and mostly everything else is a d6 other than the hammer. So if you upgrade your weapon dice, you're also effectively upgrading the skill damage dice too, which is really cool. Either way, the boulder will be launched out and it'll strike a target 2 spaces, or if they're a flying target or in the air, for some reason if they're jumping and somehow able to stay up for a long time, you would be able to knock them down. And maybe he's low gravity, you're just like, get down from there, and bam. And so you launch out this boulder, the weapon dice would hit, and for not just this attack, but every attack you do with this staff, which is being your weapon of choice for that day, you would deal ground damage with that weapon. And that's how you would calculate out from the weapon. Is there any passive abilities on weapons? I do not believe so. I think all weapons are all active abilities. Even the broom, which allows you to fly, is something you have to activate and put energy into. Yeah, I don't think there's anything here. Passive, oh, for the higher ups, the really expensive ones, except for the nature room, which has some really cool ones. But this has a passive. So these are like super rare, by the way. Diamond runes and arcane rune weapons. Arcane rune is extremely rare. Diamond rune is borderline unheard of, like a myth type of thing. Like people talk about it, but it's more like almost like a childhood fairy tale, folk tale. Like it's something like we've never confirmed if this is real or not. It's just out there. Very strong abilities, really cool. So with that is the active and passive abilities of armor and weapons and runes and how they manipulate your defensive and offensive elements to deal the most amount of damage or to receive, hopefully, not lethal damage, or try to prevent lethal damage. One thing I want to cover before we go into what happens to energy in and out of combat. We'll get there in a moment. The next thing I want to say is once per day, you will choose a weapon and you will choose an armor, and those are your set active runic weapon and armor for the day. You cannot have, oh, I have a light rune in this staff, I have a fire rune in this staff, and interchange them arbitrarily throughout the day. The one you select for that day is the one you will have active for that day. Okay. Let me repeat that, because I know some people are there. Why can't I just change between them? Because it requires your active focus of channeling the magic in that rune, in that item, each day to make it work. Also, it breaks the game. If everyone just had every rune available and a different piece of every armor available to them, then there would be no point to going around and collecting everything and going on adventures when you can just pull something out of a magical rabbit out of a hat. Which, by the way, rabbits deserve better rights. They shouldn't be getting pulled out of no hats. But that's a different story. So yeah, you get one weapon rune that you would augment per day. You get one armor that you would get to augment per day. Of course, that means you have to get those. You have to earn those. You have to go on jobs, find them, cleanse caves that are being affected by the influence of magical forces of runes that are sprouting up over the world. So there's that part. Now going on to the next part. What do you do out of combat? How do I handle out of combat energy? I believe it's scrolled up here. Social. Using runes. So this covers what I just said. That you can enchant one to your weapon once a day, and only one of offensive and defensive can be active at a time. So that just reiterates what I was just saying. There's a nice page for it. Using energy. So if you are out of combat, your energy does not roll over. So if you had 10 stored up in combat, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to have 10 after combat. No, that is not how it works. Once combat is determined to be over, you are no longer energy. You cannot postpone combat to milk the energy system. Your enemy will either surrender or try to run away. If you try to make them so they can't do either one of those, combat is still effectively over because now you are in control of the situation. There is no longer a disagreement of even a violent disagreement or whatever happens for that combat. You cannot milk the combat system by just forcing an engagement. You can't just ask, hey buddy, you want to fight me so I can earn some energy so I can heal off this wound on my back? It doesn't work that way. So when I cast spells or abilities outside of combat, whether it's my armor, weapon, or one of my abilities, where does it go? What does it use? It uses your life energy. You have a pool of up to -10 energy you can use to cast spells. So let's say I want to do that shielded strike. It costs 3, right? So I'm going to do it out of combat to initiate a fight before they even know what happens, giving me the shielded condition, or, you know, just to take someone off guard. It's going to cost me 3, and then we'll jump into combat. And what will happen is the cost of 3 minus 3 will carry over into the combat, right? So that means when I roll that first roll, the D20 and the D10, I'm already starting at a -3. Right? So that means when I roll that D10, if I rolled a 3 like I did last time, I'd be at a net 0 for my first round of combat for energy. Still would have hit with my spear, everything else would have been fine, but I wouldn't be able to do the shielded strike additionally in there. You already did the shielded strike. It's almost like this is a debt. This is an energy debt, or you're borrowing energy from your own life, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is you can see in bold in the center of this page, if you reach a -10 energy outside of combat or in combat, you will die. That's it. That is game over for that character. There are ways to bring people back to life. They are extremely expensive and hard to find somebody who can do it because it's so expensive, but it can be done. It does not mean it does not come without a cost. Most people who brought back to life usually have memory issues. Usually their brain or their soul isn't fully properly intact because you're trying to pull it back from the eternal flame, which is where souls usually go. That isn't always the case, but depending on the person's beliefs, right? I'm just using it as an example. So that is how you use magic outside. Now, I've seen this used to great, amazing skill. Someone used the ground gambeson. Cave was collapsing. They needed an immediate exit, so they pulled apart the earth to create a tunnel to get them outside. So in situations you have that ability to create an opportunity for you and your party to get out of danger immediately, but it comes with a cost. Now that person's at a -6. Well, what is that? If they did it twice, that's a -6. -6 is still really bad. And if you sleep, it doesn't go away. The only way to recover that is when you go into an honest to goodness life or death situation of combat. Is when you roll that D10 dice, it recovers that energy. But the worst part, of course, the worst part is dying. You don't want to die in the game. But the worst part is also having a -6. What that does means every roll you make, and every breath, every roll you make will be at a -6. Now that's before adding your modifiers in. That means you roll a d20. I want to outrun the sandstorm. Well, you're worn out from digging out that hole through that temple to save everybody. You roll a d20, you got an 18, but now you got -6. That's a 12. You needed a 13 to pass this check. Unfortunately, you failed. Oh, wait. I have a +1 to agility. I just have a 13. You barely make it. But it's a huge difference. A -6 is detrimental. And like I said, it doesn't go away by sleep. I think that's really cool. I think it could be punishing. Now, I will say there is an optional rule, if you would like, if you're a game master listening to this, that you might want to work on your table, is if for every day of full sleep, no action, no event, nothing, they regain 1, right? They regain 1 energy per day of rest. And maybe that's how you compensate. There's other ways. There are scrolls, potions that are invented. They've been trying to find ways to generate this magical energy force that they've been trying to tap into, but it just doesn't seem to always work. The times it does work, it's usually for a very small amount of energy, and it's usually very expensive, which is written here. Okay, so we've handled weapons with runes, armors with runes, how combat rules, how initiative rules, how you generate energy, how does energy function, what is the ecology of using energy, how can I prevent not dying by using too much outside magic, the active and passive abilities of armors and weapons, going over abilities. I think I've already said some of this. I'm going to cover one last thing, just as like a little tidbit into the next section. We'll cover levels later. We're going to cover critical hits, mortal wounds, and then we're going to end with the rune conversion chart. When your health drops to 0, normally, like if you're in combat and you get knocked down to 0, you go unconscious and you suffer what's called a mortal wound. If you take 3 mortal wounds, you are dead. So you go unconscious, someone comes over, they slap you with a potion, they heal you with some magic, and you stand back up. You're still weak because your health is still relatively low. So, does the mortal wound go away? It does not. You still have that 1x, as like in baseball, 3 strikes, you're out. You have a strike against you, a mortal wound. And that could be symbolized by a scar you now have, an injury you now have. I've had players lose limbs during boss fights. That counts as a mortal wound. Even if they get it attached, it will still be a mortal wound because your body remembers the score. It remembers that strike. It will feel that pain. And some people, you can represent that by saying you have the new limb surgically added back on, but of course it's been off your body for a while. You've healed the bleeding, you stopped the bleeding, but the limb feels like it's numb, like a phantom limb syndrome, where it feels like your brain's moving it, but it's a little delayed, like there's a latency there. There's like something that's causing it to feel like it's out of sync. You're still able to do the things you want to, but it doesn't feel the same. And just little things like that. And that's not to punish the players and whatsoever. It's to build those memories and stories of, man, that was so epic. I have this wicked scar. And people in town, they'll see people with scars, you know, in the bar, and they'll be like, hey, how'd you get that? Right? Oh, what's the story behind that? I've had this happen in real life. So I'm sure it could happen in your game. So that's mortal wounds. And how else do you get mortal wounds? When a monster or a player roll a critical hit, they will cause a mortal wound. That means they've struck a part of the being's body that is vulnerable and they've suffered a mortal wound. Most monsters, if they're small, only need one mortal wound to be KO'd, knocked out, or dead. If it's a medium monster, they'll take 2. If it's a large monster, it'll take 3. If it's a giant monster, it can take up to 4 mortal wounds. Now, have I seen this happen on large monsters? No. Usually, by the time they've hit a mortal wound, they're already doing enough damage that they're outpacing the mortal wound ever being a problem. But also, rolling that many crits is crazy. Now, another option you may want to use, which is from other systems, of course, which I have it written as an optional, you can say a critical hits double the damage dice, right? Like, that's a representation of that. But either way, going to 0 HP is a mortal wound. So, they're more or less interchangeable. But that is what critical hits do. The page for critical hits is at the very back, because this was originally the back of the first book, but we added an addition. Instead of writing 2 books, we put 2 in 1. So let's go ahead. Here is the critical hits section. So I did write optional rule that critical hits double the damage dice. So if you would like to use that at your table, you're welcome to. It will make combats go very fast. I will say that, because you'll have one player that's doing like 15, 20 damage, average, maybe a turn if really lucky. And then you have one person that gets a crit, and it could spike up to almost 40. So it'll be almost double of someone rolling a really good round, because that's how, like, I guess, cool and impactful a critical hit should feel at the table. That's something that's so rare, it's like, whoa! Everyone's eyes should kind of open and pop out of their heads. Yeah, okay, so this covers the critical wounds, it covers the creatures. You can also have fun with this. You have fun with this as a GM. You can have a cat. You know, that's supposed to have 9 lives, right? You can symbolize that by it having 9 mortal wound counts. Cat falls off a skyscraper. It's alive. Yeah, how does it walk away? Well, it took a mortal wound. You see, like, it's got like a scar on it. So if you see a cat with like 8 scars, you can tell that cat's like on its last leg, and it's like out for blood. Maybe it's out for revenge. I just made some anime right there. That's an anime backstory for you. Either way, yeah. That'll cover that. I mentioned I would cover mortal wounds, critical hits, and now I'm going to just briefly cover the rune conversion, just for a moment here, just to give a teaser of other content and how that kind of relates. So let's say you don't want to put your rune in your weapon or your armor. What can I even do with it? This is the rune exchange board. This isn't the same for every single dwelling or establishment that you may visit on your adventure. Different places may have different rates. Just because if you're in the desert, a water rune's gonna be worth a lot more. Or if you're in a place that loves horses, well, if you have a horse you want to trade a horse in, they already have a bunch. Maybe a saturated market, may not be worth as much. But if you find the right person, if it's a rare breed, maybe you can get something. But you need to talk to your game master. Find out the setting. Find out what things are really worth in those areas. Because Runecraft is an exchange system. It is not a one-for-one for everything. So this is a guide. This exchange board is a guide to help you get an idea of what could possibly be worth what in any given instance. So if I had a common rune, that's a night at the tavern with some food, you know, maybe I want some more arrows, that's a common rune. You know, just basic exchanges for basic items is going to most likely be a common rune. And when you get to the more specialized an item is, the more rare it is, the more elaborate and more work it takes to put into it, the higher it's going to go up this list. So rarity 5, of course, is the diamond rune, which can be pretty much exchanged for anything in an entire continent because they're worth so much. But yeah, this is the page, of course, that the printers always have fun with. Page 37 in the book. It's 38 on the online version. But yeah, so that will cover rune exchanges. And that just reminded me what I needed to edit before the final print goes out. But be out momentarily. With that, that is what we'll end today. Thank you for tuning in for how to handle combat. When it comes to rewards and finishing combat, Runecraft does not use an XP system. You don't gain XP just because you took out some goblins. You get runes and you go and exchange them with people to learn new skills, just like real life. You don't get better just on your own. You have to find a mentor, find somebody who's willing to teach you, even if it's just for a day, to teach you a new skill, teach you how to be a little stronger. You know, it's kind of like people who go to the gym and they have a spotter, or people who go to school and have a teacher, or people that are struggling and they want to get better and they get a tutor, right? It's always good to have a reference. And so it helps build up that life skill too a little bit. I know, I'm sorry, I'm trying to help you better yourselves as I'm emotionally struggling myself, you know. You take my own advice. But with that, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you love Runecraft as much as I do, and the hard work me and all of the wonderful play testers and the people who have helped me edit it have. And I will see you in the next video where we will be covering even more. Check the title to see what that is. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.